Hello and welcome to our last episode of this 5-part series, Learning Agile using Scrum. Before we dig deeper into our today's session, let's quickly do a recap of what we have learned over the last 4 weeks. In session 1, we learned what a project is and how is it different from routine work. We also learned about various project phases. In session 2, we took a deep dive into methodologies, learned what are the major differences between waterfall and agile, and also discussed how to select the right methodology for your project. Week 3, we introduced you to the Scrum framework. We looked at the 5 critical Scrum ceremonies, which are sprint planning, sprint, daily stand-up, sprint demos, and sprint retrospectives. And last week, we talked about Scrum team compositions, discussed various roles and their respective responsibilities. And lastly, we talked about how to build a culture of accountability. Why accountability is so critical for you to successfully deliver your projects. So moving along to our final session, our objectives for today are understanding what is quality and how to build a quality first organization, and then we will end this series by understanding what is an agile mindset and why is it so critical in today's dynamic landscape. So what is quality? Quality means, is your application functioning as specified in the user stories? So how do we measure quality? How do we know that your application is functioning as designed? So there are multiple parameters that you can use to measure quality, but for purposes of our session today, we are going to focus on 4 parameters, and they are usability, number 2, performance, number 3, reliability, and number 4 is security. So what is usability? So usability is how is the user experience, meaning how easy and intuitive it is to operate the application. If we go back to that travel site example, how easy it is for people to come and log into our website and make their reservations. Do we need to send them to a formal training, or do we need to send them a training manual? How can the application be so easy to use that anyone who has no prior experience can log in and make their travel reservations? That's usability. Now performance. What is performance? So performance is how responsive your application is. And that responsiveness is made up of 2 sub attributes. Number 1, how fast it sends information back to me, and number 2, how many transactions can it process in a single time period. Now what does that mean? That means is that if I am going to that travel website and I say book or search, how long does it take to get me the search results back? Right. Some application may say within 1 second, some may say 3 seconds, some may say 9 seconds. Again, you will define what is the right performance metrics for your application. Now in terms of how many transactions it can process, same example, how many users can concurrently log into that website and do their search and make their reservations, right? How often do we hear that this website went on, it got so much traffic that the website has to be shut down? or could not bear the load. So those two things are two sub attributes of performance. Now number 3, reliability. Now what does reliability to you means? How reliable is your friend? When you are in need, does your friend show up? Right? So same principle applies to your application. How reliable is your application? When you need it, is your application available to you? Right? If you go to the travel website and your application, your search results don't show up, or your search results show up, but as you say book, the system goes into a hang and doesn't return any message to you. So that's the reliability of applications. So your applications are available, running 24/7, 365 days. If that is a need. Now you may not have that need. So you need to understand what are your needs for that application's reliability and make sure those needs are met when you're designing and developing that application. And number 4 is security. You know how important security is in today's world. Every day we hear instances where a hospital is being held hostage because all their data is locked out, and the hospital has to now go on to paper charts to provide care, otherwise they cannot continue to provide care for their patients. So in our travel website, if you are making a reservation and you are entering your personal credit card number, you want to make sure that that credit card number is secure. Hackers cannot log in and steal your credit card number or your personal information, your name, your address, and other critical informations that you have provided to that website. So security has become a very, very important aspect as and when we are designing the application, any digital product. And so that's the 4 quality attributes that one must always consider when designing an application. So now how do you build quality into your product, right? And many people will say, okay, once the product is done, we will then start to look at the quality of the product by doing all kind of testings. Now my mindset, I come from Kaizen and Toyota mindset. We say quality is at every step of your product development, every step of your car development. I don't know how many of you know about car assembly lines. In 70s, 80s and 90s, the American car manufacturers' mindset was that the line must not stop, because every time a line stops, there is millions of dollars of loss that the car company has to encounter because everyone is sitting idle. So the biggest push was that the car assembly line should constantly be moving. However, Toyota are known for their quality, and they said if you see same mistake being repeated more than 3 times, then you pull the chain and the car line will stop. And as we all understand, if the car line stops, everyone is idle. So general manager of the plant will run down and say, what is going on? Why is our assembly line closed? And they will then get to the root cause of why a mistake is being repeated, so they can fix that root cause. Otherwise, that mistake will be there, and then the car will not pass the quality at the end of the line, or the car will get to the consumer and break down and bring a bad reputation to your brand. So these are very, very important aspects. Quality to me is built in right at the start of your project. So what does that mean? In my opinion, the most important factor is engaging quality folks early, i.e. as you begin to formulate requirements. In the Scrum framework, at a high level, user story has a 5-step life cycle. Number 1, story grooming. Number 2, technical elaboration. Number 3, development. Number 4, testing. Number 5, demonstrating the finished user story to product owner and other relevant stakeholders.
and if passes, close that user story. Now let's look at each of these life cycle and how testing and validation comes into play in each of these phases. So during story grooming, you decompose a large feature into a bite-sized user story. When writing a user story, make sure that one, it is clearly written. So there is no ambiguity. Developers and testers can easily understand and complete their activities. Two, the acceptance criteria are indisputable. There is a clear boundary, clear set of conditions that the story must fulfill. Now, in technical elaboration stage of the story lifecycle, you must include testers in technical design sessions. And the reason being, it is important that the testers understand how are they going to test this application. They need to understand what conditions this application must meet so they can appropriately create test cases and identify the right test data to execute those test cases. And third, we need to come to an agreement on how are we going to procure this test data. Are we going to use a sample of production data or are we going to mock up this data?
And then the remaining three stages are pretty standard. During development phase, make sure developers are unit testing every user story before they are promoting it to the QA environment. A. B. Whatever unit testing they are performing, make sure that unit testing is captured and recorded somewhere. So what test cases they performed, what data they used, what output was produced, all that needs to be captured in some tool. So it is easy to validate by the QA folks as well as the product owner in case there are challenges later on when testing that user story. In testing phase, it is very important that QA folks have clarity on test data as we defined earlier on. That test data is made available to them in a timely manner and the rounds of testing they need to do. So one of the biggest challenges that a lot of organizations encounter is what is the severity of a defect. So if there is an observation found where application is not performing the way it is, let's have a clarity on how we define the severity of that defect. Again, for today's purposes, we are not going to get into the severity, but this becomes an important component when you are deciding whether to pass or fail that user story with those defects. And then the final step of a user story is a product owner testing the application, where product owner and other key stakeholders will test the application and make sure it is working per the specifications defined in the user story. And if it is, then the story is closed. If it is not, then the story is failed and it goes back to the developer to fix those defects and then comes through the cycle again.
By following these steps, you will ensure that a fewer stories fail in the quality gate and your overall quality score goes up. In my experience, Scrum is an excellent framework to build quality product. Why? Because you are building the product in smaller increments and thereby getting products in the hands of users. And once users are able to test, they will be able to provide you with feedback. Based on that feedback, you will be able to ensure that you are building right features and providing great value to users. On to our final topic of this series. What is Agile Mindset? Agile was built on a certain core values and beliefs such as respect, collaboration, transparency, constant improvement, courage, teamwork, focus, and most important, ability to change.
Why? Because as we discussed in previous sessions, the genesis of Agile was to build a product incrementally so we can deliver immediate value to our users and build and enhance our product increment over increment. So why is that important? Over the last 30 years, we have seen an accelerated rate of disruption. Why? Because of commoditization of broadband internet and smartphones, and then the pandemic in 2020 has shown us that there is no industry that is immune to these disruptions. So what does this mean to you? This means that now we have an added risk when we are planning our strategic roadmap. This high level of uncertainty needs to be accounted for when we are building new products, rolling out new services. And after heavy assessment, companies have realized the waterfall method does not suit in today's day and age. We need to be able to pivot quickly. We need to be able to get our products in hands of users quickly. So if you're going to fail, we fail fast. So we can redesign and bring a newer version of that product in our user side. So Agile is a perfect methodology, and Scrum is an excellent framework for you to deliver projects that have uncertain and ambiguous scope. Let's talk about what we have learned over the 4 weeks and how it relates to these items. So number one, in Scrum, we talked about our product backlog. Our product backlog is fluid. What that means is product owner can change the requirements based on the feedback from end users without much bureaucracy. And not only that, product owner has the flexibility to change the priority of user stories. And how does that help? So it ensures that we are rolling out the right features that our clients are telling us. Number two, sprint, a time-boxed fashion in which sprints are executed. So the time-boxed nature of sprint, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, ensures that our scope during that period is fixed. Even though our product backlog is fluid, our sprint backlog is fixed. So when teams are working on delivering your sprint goals, there are no distractions. They are focused on delivering those goals. And number two benefit of running in small iterative fashion is that whatever work that you complete is hardened to ensure that it can be rolled out to production if needed. Third critical component of Scrum framework is the daily stand-up. It enables teams to collaborate. Why? Because everybody is required to come to the daily stand-up. It is a 15-minute session that runs quickly at the start of the day and in some instances at the end of the day. And you all get up and discuss what you have accomplished, what your goal for today is, and if you are stuck somewhere, and if you are, who can help you get unstuck. It builds the team chemistry and empower individuals to solve problems as a team. Fourth component of Scrum framework is sprint reviews. This is an amazing platform which allows developers and testers to work with end users to showcase the product that they have built or the product they're building. And the benefit of this thing is that you can find gaps that you were not able to find during a conception stage. And there's a fast turnaround to get those fixes out. Improves the acceptability of that product. And fifth, the most important aspect of Scrum is the sprint retrospective. You meet at the end of every sprint, collectively as a group. Everybody is coming in a secure environment to bring what went well and the areas where we can improve our processes. And if they have improved something from the feedback given in the previous sprint, then how did the new process work out? Should we continue or do we need to further tweak that process? So this brings us to the end of this series. If you like to learn more about this subject, you have two options. One, you can join the project delivery community. And number two is you can join the 4-week Scrum course that is available at www.learnagile.ca. Also, if you enjoyed this series, please do not forget to like and subscribe. Till next time, adios.